Hello, welcome to a new video on the How to Suck at Recording channel. Kind of trying different things, and what I'd like to do today is do kind of an artist feature. My name is Dan. Unfortunately, Britton can't be here today, but joining me from Calgary is my old internet friend, Brendan, aka Carrot Adventure, aka the Synthosaurus. So what's up, Brendan?
Hi, Dan. Too much. Having a cup of coffee. Thanks for having me on the show. This is my first ever podcast. I'm a little nervous, but also excited.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, this is new for me too. I've never done. I mean, we've. I don't know if we want to go too deep into it, but Brendan hosts a radio show. What's the name of the station up in Calgary?
So it's the local campus community radio station. So it's at the University of Calgary. It's FM radio. Nice. CJSW is the name of the station.
Cool, and it's all online. You said C what? CG?
CJSW is the call sign, and if you want to listen to it online, it's cjsw.com. It's actually it's a really good radio station, even as far as like campus community stations are concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to your show a couple times, and I mean, your show is great, and it seems like a legit station. And I mean, just as we have a lot of great stations here in Chicago coming out of colleges, and it's always nice to have those awesome independent sort of sources.
Yeah, like, I mean, usually you associate it with being like, I mean, you get stuff that's really off the beaten track, but usually like the quality of programming is like super brutal and that kind of a thing. But with CJSW, I mean, for one thing, it's really well funded. So like we have good gear. It's actually like the broadcast booth is really nice, but also just in terms of programmers and stuff, like it's really low turnover. Like we've had guys that have been doing their radio shows for like, you know, some guys like 20, 25 years. Wow. It's crazy. The guy that my show neighbor is this guy named, his name is Nat Chaos, and he's a Japanese dude, but he hosts a metal show, and it's 2 a.m. to 5:30 a.m.
Whoa.
Every Thursday night, Friday morning. He's been doing that show for 20 years.
In that same time slot, or?
As far as I know, yeah.
Wow, that's a really cool time slot for that.
Yeah, his show is very like revered, and he actually like all of his spoken word bits he does in like crazy metal voice, basically like Nathan Explosion or something. And so like, you know, the first time I met him, I wasn't sure what he would, and then I didn't realize he was this like really mild-mannered Japanese guy. Yeah. So anyways, his show is really worth checking out. It's called The Rage Cage.
Right on. Rage Cage.
If you like metal.
You know, I find a lot of the folks who are really, you know, deep into metal and like almost scholars of it to be some of the most mild-mannered people I know.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird
They're
thing.
The most supportive and the most friendly, even though their aesthetic is like, I don't know.
I think it's something like they get their aggression out from listening to such aggressive music.
Yeah.
I know. I listen to black metal to relax sometimes.
Yeah, I have a few friends that do. I'm not one to do that. I'm not really much of a metal guy. Like I appreciate it, but I don't really get home and I'm like, oh, now time to unwind some black metal kind of a thing.
Yeah, well, speaking of what you are into, I mean, we were just listening to 2019, which was a track you put up. A little backstory for us: we met on a website called Metafilter, which is a pretty big website owned by a really nice guy, and they have a music channel, and we just kind of met through that. It's kind of like an online open mic. I've seen it described as. And that's
that's pretty well put.
Yeah, I think it's an apt comparison. And you know, that was a popular track on the site. It made it onto their podcast, which they do monthly.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a site worth.
It's always a nice little, you know, a little feather in your cap if you get a podcast feature. It's kind of exciting.
Yeah, I remember like I was introduced to Metafilter by my now brother-in-law. And
Okay.
I didn't know there was a music component to it, and I saw it, and I just posted something, and the first thing I posted got onto the podcast, and I was
No
like,
way.
cool.
Yeah, yeah. And especially if you're younger, like, whoa, I'm on the internet now.
Yeah,
And stuff.
there was
So,
it was a little bit of a thing like that. Yeah, there was a little bit of
yeah.
a wow.
And I mean, the podcast has some reach. It's like you say, it's a, Metafilter's pretty big now. Like, I forget how many users, but it's, it's one thing to have a lot of a lot of members or subscribers on your website, but with Metafilter, it's actually, it's a pretty engaged
Absolutely,
community.
yeah.
So,
Absolutely. And underneath the song title, when it gets on the podcast, they put a little thing called featured track, and it's a cute little. It's like getting a little check mark, the blue check mark on Twitter or something.
Yeah, that's right. That's 100% what it is. Yeah. Well, good job. You did it.
You have been curated to the top.
Yeah. So yeah, Metafilter's good. I have to say, I'm pretty much different websites, and especially for like community based music communities, they've sort of come and gone over the years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember the 61 for instance.
No, I don't.
It was interesting. It was an interesting attempt at sort of like a progressive new music model where independent artists could get their stuff out there, but also kind of be compensated for their tracks and that kind of thing. And it was a cool idea, but it died out after maybe 10 years. But the cool thing about that one was that the sense of community was really strong. That's kind of the same thing with Metafilter that I feel, except it's actually, it's pretty old guard at this point. So yeah, I'm pretty much just putting stuff there these days.
You can totally read about it on Wikipedia, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I never have, but I'm sure, it's been around for quite a while and it's pretty well established. I once heard Jessamine on NPR.
Really?
Yeah, she was being like interviewed because she's one of the main people behind Metafilter.
Yeah, that's
and the main mods, and she's a library science expert, and it was some kind of story about that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So anyway, enough about Metafilter, even though we're going to be looking at Metafilter for most of this podcast if you're watching it on YouTube. But let's get to gear.
Yeah, sure. All right. I'm rubbing my hands together with Lee. Time for a gear chat.
Yeah. So anyway, I think first off, I think the big story with the big McGuigs, aka Carrot Adventure, aka Synthosaurus, is the sequential circuits Prophet that you've been using and doing some recording with.
I've been going bananas on it. Well, for the last 24 hours lately. I don't own one, sadly, because they're like $3,500. But so I work at the Long and McQuaid, which I don't know if Americans know about Long and McQuaid, but it's sort of like the Guitar Center of Canada. Mm-hmm. So the Calgary store is one of the bigger stores, so we get some cool toys every now and again, and we got a Prophet 6. And so I'm messing around with it. I'd seen it the year before, but I was never any good at the Dave Smith instruments. I found they have a little bit of a learning curve, kind of harder to make it do what I wanted. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of the digital elements kind of like harken back to sort of like I don't know, like 80s and 90s like DX7 style interfaces. They're actual knobs, but there are like deeper things. And aren't a lot of the knobs continuous? Or programmable?
Good question. Don't know off the top of my head, but I mean, they're great. They sound fantastic, and the engine is so powerful. You can make it do all kinds of stuff, but it's so powerful. I found, like a guy like me, I find it kind of unwieldy. Mm-hmm. But I've sort of been getting better at it. I mean, if you find a preset that's 80% what you want, you can usually kind of get it where you need to go from there. So, I sort of had this aha moment with the Prophet 6 because I always was sort of indifferent to it, but I was kind of cycling through presets and I found like the perfect, like kind of retro 80s tone. And then the big sort of sea change was my buddy showed me that because it's got a sequencer and a really good arpeggiator, and that's always good. But I didn't know, for whatever reason, I was not aware that the sequencer, you can actually like it's a polyphonic sequencer. I'm used to just a single step sequencer or whatever. So you can actually do like chord progressions and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So it immediately started like irritating my coworkers for the rest of the day doing loops and that. So,
dude, well, I guess you may have to start saving up.
Yeah. Well,
or so maybe take out a small mortgage or something like that. Yeah. Just put something into.
Well, I mean, it's. I quickly realized after that I realized, because we'll probably talk about this more later, but as the gear chat continues, but I picked up a JDXA recently, and I'm like, oh, that thing definitely can do the same thing. I'm sure of it. So even though I had to be up at like 4 o'clock this morning to get to the radio station, I definitely stayed up till like midnight-ish, trying to figure out the sequencer on the JDXA, and it does do it. So
cool. Yeah, I'm looking at the JDXA now, or at least I'm trying to. There it is. Yeah, that thing's. I remember seeing this thing because I actually was able to go to NAMM just like a few years ago.
Oh, really? Eh?
Yeah. I went with Hammond, Oregon. I know a few guys who work for Hammond. They're owned by Suzuki, but
yeah, right.
they're designed still here in Chicago, or in Addison, Illinois, which is west of Chicago.
Yeah, I know we were talking about the SK1 because I've got one of those too.
Yeah. I remember that now.
And that is an unreal board. Holy smokes!
I haven't gone into it. I have one in the studio.
Really?
Yeah, I'm more of the Nord guy, which is another one we have in the studio. Just because it's a little, I feel it's a little easier to tweak.
Yeah,
which is
saying something, because the Nord stuff isn't the most well, unless you're Swedish. I don't know if it's super intuitive that way, but I find them a bit unwieldy as well. The Hammond even more so, but there's a couple tricks to getting around it that I just sort of sat down with the manual and kind of like, okay, I guess we're doing this.
Yeah, I also got the Nord for the Nord stage. The Nord Stage 2 is the one we have. I also got that one first, so I learned it first.
Okay, yeah, fair enough then. And I've heard that if once you same with the Electron stuff, like that's the other Swedish company where I'm like, man, like what do those guys get up to over there that they make all these like weird interfaces for their stuff? But my one buddy told me, no, like if you pick up an Electron, Digitone or whatever, like you learn one and then they all make sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I just haven't worked enough with the SK1. It strikes me as more of just like it's for a stage musician than the Nord stage, even though the Nord has stage in the name.
Right.
I just found it like really, really awesome. The sampler section especially is really cool.
Oh, really? Eh?
Because it's built as very modular. So like you can have a sample going through a bunch of effects and then just change the sample, instead of like having to change a whole patch to get a different sample. So that in particular, I mean, it's not worth the money, just for that, but
sure,
it is really cool.
Plus, the actual sounds are wicked, and anyways.
Yeah, the sounds in the Hammond are also great, but this JDXA is pretty flash. Yeah,
it's well said. Yeah, it's like being in a space shuttle using it, which is kind of fun. And it's it's interesting because I got an insane deal on mine because we basically ended up blowing them out. Like people weren't buying this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of looked at it. We had one kicking, like we basically, at work we had like a big blow up, like, please buy our shit. We don't want it anymore. And we had 3 of these things and none of them sold. And I could I think it was original price was $2,800 or something like that, and they were selling it basically for $1,400, like just trying to grow it. They're brand new, right?
Mm-hmm.
No one was buying them, and I thought, like, what on earth? So I hadn't really heard of it before. I'd maybe seen one, but I started messing around with it, and I was like, holy crow! Like, A, this thing can do everything. It's incredibly powerful, but B, I also totally see why it didn't sell, because it's a crossover synth. essentially, not, and by virtue of that, it's, it's not analog-y enough for the Moog crowd, and it's not digital enough for the Phantom crowd and stuff.
Yeah. I'm not sure when this, me and Britton did an episode yesterday, and we should talk more about. We should get back on that subject later, about what Roland's doing,
Sure.
and why it's so weird. There's a particular subject. It has to do with, of all things, Behringer. But but while we were, we're talking about these synths, and we're still kind of like on the, just talking about these synths we like. Let's get back to the Prophet, and we're gonna take a quick listen to the sequence that you set up, because I think this is like one of the best like sounding samples of this synthesizer that I've heard. So.
Oh, right on. Yeah, I mean, my feelings were the same. Just that, like, as I said, it was a slightly modified preset, and I was just like, that's it. Like, that's the synth sound that everyone wants, kind of thing. Like, it's so full, it's so clean. Like, it's I kind of inherited an old. My parents had a JX a JX8P, like an old school Roland analog polysynth, and that thing sounds unreal. But this one. It's been a long time since I've heard a synth give that one a run for its money, but like playing the Prop 6, I was like, this sounds even better than the JX8P. Like, it's crazy.
That's a really cool synth, that JX8P. I'm looking at a picture right now.
Yeah,
but let's take a quick listen to this sequence that you did.
All right, sweet.
So yeah, I listened to this recording you made first on my phone, and I was like, "Wow, cool!" While I was in bed. and then I listened on my speakers a little while later, and I was like, "Wow, this is cool. We should talk about this at length." And then when I was getting ready to do the Skype call and everything, I was playing it back, making sure that my recording software was capturing the audio, and I listened to it in my headphones, and that's when I really was just like, holy cow, because it just kind of pops out of the headphones.
Yeah,
it's like,
what you're hearing is basically just the sound engine of the synth, like including that chorus is it's one of the onboard effects. It's like a built-in analog chorus. It sounds so rich, I can't believe it.
Yeah, I love a good chorus.
Yeah, the one, and again, like to bringing it back to that JX8P that I kind of inherited from my folks. They like that's been sort of the gold standard for me as far as like an analog chorus on a synth. And this one, like it blows it out of the water. It's so good. The only thing I did with the in post was I scooped out the mid range a little bit. And I added reverb in post using software. And I did a little bit of kind of phase separation or whatever to make the headphone kind of experience a little richer. So, but otherwise it's just straight up that's the synth, baby.
Yeah. I mean, that's bog standard help on a recording that you want people to listen to. Is just a little bit of EQ, a little bit of reverb, maybe some compression, whatever. If you're not doing that, you probably, or at least considering it, you're probably not doing it due diligence.
Right. Oh yeah. I guess I should be bearing in mind here that the whole point of this podcast is about sucking at recording. So if you want to suck at recording, Avoid any EQing or reverb. That's, it's a key step.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
on this particular episode, do the opposite. It's opposite day on how to suck at recording.
How to not suck at recording? The other thing you can do it if you want to suck, you can do it two ways. Either add no reverb or add like 200% reverb on everything. Probably the more common practice, actually, of the two.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not to pull the curtain away too much, but like turn up the sometimes. Did you remember Gary Larson at all?
Yeah, I know the Far Side Comic.
Yeah, turning up the suck.
Yeah, his last day as the band technician. Yeah, poor guys.
Yeah,
it's kind of true though. Like, except the knob isn't a suck; it's like compression.
Yeah, well, it's bit crushing. I don't know. I don't know what it is actually. There is no knob. It's just like it's such this weird sucking is just such a weird. Sort of intangible thing.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of different ways you can suck. I would say probably the most popular. I don't know if you want to get into this as part of that. So just stop me anytime if this is too much of a digression.
No, this is good.
Okay. Because like, it seems to me like one of the trends right now in terms of ways in which recordings are kind of sucking, and then this has been talked about by lots of people other than me, but the whole like compression bonanza that's been going on.
A current one? Please explain more.
Well, so I think you can basically blame EDM for it, and how pop music and EDM kind of became the same thing. But if you look at like recordings are so loud these days, right? Like they're so compressed.
Mm-hmm.
And a buddy of mine told me that he's a big John Mayer fan, and I'm trying to think. I think it was Battle Studies, and he was like, "Wow, this holy shit, this is so compressed as usual," or whatever. And he looked at the waveform. He's like, "Wow, there's actually a bit of clipping in like the final master track on like a John Mayer thing or whatever." So that's how far it's gotten, and I get it to a certain extent. But I have to say, these days, I hardly compress my recordings at all. Like, only where absolutely necessary.
Same. I have to qualify that I am so divorced from pop music that, like, I didn't even know what you're talking about. Like,
oh, really?
I thought the loudness wars were over. I've been like living in a cave.
Yeah,
when they were
since
they were declared over.
What's that?
I've been living in a cave since they were declared over.
Okay, maybe. Because I mean that was a thing that people were talking about maybe like 7 years ago. I remember it being like a hot topic. Like, but I don't think it's gone away necessarily. I think it's just an accepted practice these days. Pretty much all the pop music I listen to sounds really compressed, and I certainly notice even just on Metafilter, like I kind of get self-conscious sometimes because whenever I put up a track, I always notice it's like usually a lot quieter than other people's, which is not that there's anything wrong with that, but I realize if you're listening to it as like on the RSS feed or whatever, that's probably annoying because you have to ride your volume knob.
Yeah, I mean that's all about that's part of how to suck, right there.
Press. Yeah.
It's forcing people to get on their knobs and like.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. So yeah, I mean, as far as compression goes, it's really interesting how much it's changed for me. I used to do for many years the tracks I was making were only synths, right, and all instrumental, and so I would have like a limiter on like the master track, and then when you do that, the song kind of mixes itself a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Totally know what you mean.
So, which is kind of
you mix into the compressor a little bit.
Yeah, very well said. Which is fine, but I think it's kind of a cheap shortcut, and I think it takes away from,
Yeah,
in music.
I would totally do that like years ago, but I totally stopped doing it probably about 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, yes, same, except for me it was maybe a little more recent. But you realize that you're kind of you give up so much control by doing that. It's almost like I find it really interesting how everyone is all about Instagram filters now, and that whole thing. Like, we can be so lazy now with technology and with creativity. Like, it's almost like photography isn't really it's like a niche hobby now. Like
oh yeah, that's completely well said, and that's with a lot of things, a lot of art.
Yeah. I think people are more and more afraid. We're being basically kind of conditioned to use technology in a certain way by the way that apps work, right? If Instagram has a preset for a filter that looks great, like, why wouldn't you just use that instead of getting in there and messing with the colors yourself, right? Like, that's more time and energy, and meanwhile you can have a perfectly acceptable product.
Yeah, you can spend more time playing Fortnite or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Now that I've done my selfie post for the day, I can get to Fortnite. Yeah, so compression's kind of like that. That's what I'm trying to say.
It can be. It's been around for a long time. Maybe I should share a little bit about what I've done. Where, like, I remember on Metafilter Music, because I don't post a whole lot on Metafilter Music. I used to, and now it's kind of like I come around sometimes and listen to a few tracks. When I see you have a new track, I usually listen to it.
Right.
And I just saw there's a kind of a forum chat on the right side of it, and what I just saw someone post about Lander.
Okay, I don't know what that is.
This was years ago. Have you heard of these auto mastering like websites?
Yeah, I totally have.
This is one of them.
And oh yes, I have heard of Lander. Never mind. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and at the time, I was having a really, really busy summer. Kind of my business is like spring, summer. I'm like super busy working with bands, or working with theater or whatever. And then
you do a lot of live sound, right?
And live sound. But and so, like, I was having a hard time balancing, like, my time that particular year, and I saw that and I was like, holy shit, I got to try this out. So I tried it out, and like, when you work as a sound engineer, like in a small studio, it can be really difficult because you're in my particular room. I'm in the same room as the band.
Right.
I don't have a separate control room. It's a one-room recording. And so, like, I'm in the room with the drummer, and it's just like they're wanting to leave with rough mixes, and I'm like, my ears are just like really tired. So it's kind of impossible for me to make a decent mix, and also make it loud enough. So, like, usually what would happen is if I spent time making a mix and like relax my ears and everything enough, I just get an email saying, oh, it's too quiet, And so, like, I tried it, and then I stopped getting those emails entirely. And so I was like, this is pretty good. So I signed up for their yearly thing. It was $150 a year at the time. And they've since raised it. They've doubled it.
Whoa.
But they have added, to their highest tier, they've added, what's it called? Digital distribution. I have unlimited digital distribution through them, and it's pretty good. And it's all $150. But anyway, as what I found is that when I'm working on a final mix, what I'll do is I'll bring one of the masters from Lander into my mastering session and kind of try and match the loudness there. And that's been really helpful for me.
That makes a lot of sense. That's kind of
because instead of, like, the classic thing to do when mastering is to bring in a track that you think sounds a bit like, has a similar tonal footprint to what you're working on, and then you try and match loudness. Well, the thing is that you're never gonna have an exact match. With Lander, it's like it's the same song, and yeah, Lander does do a little bit. It does change the footprint a little bit, and sometimes it really sucks. It like absolutely mangles things. Sometimes it does a decent job. It all depends on what you're feeding it. So anyway, like I found that to be really helpful because you're doing the same exact track. You can just A B it, you know, go switch between the two
right.
if you you know sync them up, and it's like turning on and off a plugin basically.
Totally, yeah. And then you're not using it as a crutch. It's actually, you know, you get the best of both worlds. You get a reference point or whatever.
Yeah, and when you do that enough, you kind of just know how it works. So
I gotta tell you, I don't know anything about mastering. It's something that I kind of know is out there, and it seems really daunting. And I'm sort of like, oh, do I do it?
Yeah,
I'm that's something I learn how to do.
I'm far from what I would consider a mastering engineer, but just you know, part of sucking at recording is that sometimes you just have to put that hat on. You know?
Yeah, I guess so.
All of us do.
Mm-hmm. I guess you know, anytime you're going to call something done, I guess you know you've you've hopefully at least given some thought to the shape of the overall master. So, but it's such a rabbit hole to go down that I'm you know I just haven't. I've basically resisted the urge. Well, it's not even really resisting it because it strikes me as something that, given my personality type, I'd probably be bad at it because it can probably feel tedious pretty quickly.
You know, there is like something to be said, I think, for like depending on the project you were working on, like, and where it's going and what you intend to do with it. There is something to be said for just do it and you know whatever. Don't get too deep in the weeds with it. You know, kind of maintain sort of this objective. That's part of the reason why it's really good to get someone else to do your master. And it's so difficult for someone who's either mixed a project and spent a lot of creative energy working on it, and then or someone who actually wrote the song, recorded it themselves, which is like most music on the internet.
Right.
And that can make mastering very hard. And that's one of the reasons I think this Lander thing kind of has helped me a lot, because it is this sort of cold AI, like kind of just telling me where it thinks I should go with my master. And then I could be like, yes or no about stuff if I so choose.
Yeah. Geez, you know, I like that. I might have to give it a try.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've kind of been selling it a little bit. I can also send you. I can also send you a referral code if you want to save us $10. But anyway,
we'll all look into it and.
But yeah, okay. I think this is a good time to move on though, because mastering is a fucking deep hole.
Yes. Speaking of the rabbit hole, yeah.
So anyway, we alluded to it earlier, and you know about it because you're in the business. Behringer kind of just like sniping patents that are running out.
What the hell?
And the most recent stuff they've been doing is the 808, the Roland 808.
Oh, right. I forgot about. Everyone's still talking about the Model D. That's the one that's sort of on everyone's lips right now. But I forgot that the 808 was coming down the pipe.
Yeah, I mean the 808 is like it's not in production yet. The Model D has been in production for a while, and people are raving about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like it's classic Behringer, you know, like it's classic for this sort of phase of Behringer. Like it sounds amazing and it's like really flimsily built.
Yeah, have you tried it at all?
Like super briefly. It's I mean, it's a great idea. It's a great it's compact. It's like $400 Canadian.
Wow.
So that's probably about like
300 American.
Yeah, and then yeah. And it's got 3 oscillators, which is super cool. Well, it's a mini Moog. And I just don't like the construction at all. Every time Behringer, like they seem to cut corners in like just the right place that you're just going to get irritated by it. Mm-hmm. In spite of the sweet price point. I thought the exact same thing about the DeepMind 12 when it came out. Like it's this really cool sounding synth with like,
which one is that?
Really original, the DeepMind 12, it was like they made a 12 voice analog synth, and it wasn't a copy of anything, it was just their own thing.
Okay, I see it. Oh yeah, I remember this is from a while ago.
Yeah, I guess they've been out a little while now. A buddy of mine was so excited for it to come out, and he got me really excited for it to come out. And, you know,
well, 2016. It came out in 2016.
Okay, so there you go. So I just remember playing and being like, yeah, this sounds amazing, but like it just had like just a handful of like really crucial design flaws, you know what I mean? That just made me like go like, like really, come on, like Behringer, I wanna love you guys, but you gotta give me something to work with here.
Yeah.
Sorry?
No, go ahead.
The main things that I didn't like about it were again, flimsy construction. The faders all feel like they're gonna fall off, from the moment you start messing with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is such a big sticking point for me. It seems so minor, but like, so when you toggle presets, there's like a second or two where you look like of like lag or whatever. The synth has to like load the preset, and for a second or two, it just like won't make any sound.
I'm looking at the Sound and Sound review of this, and the first the first part of the first clause is it's not as immediate as some synths.
Yeah, that's right.
So that kind of goes with what you're saying, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like
the screen is antediluvian.
What's that mean?
That's just another con. I actually don't know what that means. Let's look it up.
Okay. The screen is kind of sucky. It's I mean, it looks cool because it's like a Game Boy or something like that, but it's not particularly helpful. And they tried to like, sort of wavetable style or something like that, show you a graph of they kind of try to do an oscilloscope, but it's not really one at all. It's just sort of like a still photo of what the sort of resulting waveform you're creating looks like. And so it's like, okay, I don't think I need that, but thanks for the extra bell and whistle or whatever. But yeah, it's
So antediluvian means ridiculously old-fashioned.
Okay.
I love Sound on Sound.
That's on point.
They really kick ass. Do you know Sound on Sound?
Yeah. Not well. I mean, we'll have copies of it lying around at work and stuff.
Right on. Well, their website is good. I actually, like, when I used to cover NAMM events, would see the Sound on Sound guy. It's just one guy, and he's like basically a cyborg.
Really?
Walking around with like a camera, a hands-free camera thing, like a bunch of wireless mics, and like it's like seriously, he looks like the Terminator, but like a content creator, the content creation version of a Terminator or something.
The world's most advanced blogger.
Yeah, they're British, and it's a pretty impressive piece of kit.
That sounds great. A blogging exosuit.
Yeah.
$6 million blogger.
Right on. Well,
we could go on.
Yeah. We should probably start to wrap it up. It's been killer, man.
Yeah, I'm looking at the clock and it's like, oh, we've just been chatting for like an hour. That really flew by. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. We should do it again sometime.
Anytime.
And maybe if Britton could make it. He's also like us, really into gear.
I'd wrap Britton for sure. I really enjoy. You guys had some good banter going on in the last episode. He seems to have a sufficiently sort of caustic sense of humor to make for an enjoyable.
Yeah, I'm definitely the yin to his yang as far as like our partnership in this venture we're undertaking to suck at recording.
Remember, kids, there's a lot of ways to suck. Try them all. And
you got to find your own way.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's about the journey. It really is about the journey.
That's right. Yeah, compress if you have to. It's you're entitled to your path.
All right. Well, now that we've thoroughly talked our heads off, I'd like to just end with your fanfare for the common synth. An even newer beat, and this features your JDXA, right?
Yeah. So a few things going on. It actually features two synths, the JDXA and the Korg Monologue, which I picked up about a year and a half ago, and it remains like I can't recommend it highly enough. It's the perfect mono synth. So basically, you're going to hear an arpeggiator pattern that's actually programmed on the sequencer for the monologue. And then there's a layer underneath that going at the same time, and that's the arpeggiator on the JDXA.
Right on.
So a lot of synth coming at you right away.
What color is your monologue?
I got the black one.
Nice.
Good question.
Yeah.
I like the black one best.
Yeah, that's what I would go with too.
Yeah,
birds of a feather.
The gold one is pretty sick, I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
But
blue's nice too. They're all nice. They're all nice.
The red one is deadly. I was thinking about the red one because the JDX. Well, I mean, I didn't have the JDX8 at the time, but actually, a red monologue would go pretty well with my JDXA and my Line 6 guitar pod.
Oh gosh,
which sits right next to it. I don't know. I didn't. I don't know if this is going to come up at all, but in terms of like gear quirks, how to suck at recording, I've got I still use a Line 6 Pod 2.0 for all my guitar stuff in the studio. So
nice.
So they are.
I probably would too if the power. The plug for the power supply in the back hadn't broken.
Oh, really? Bummer.
Yeah, I still have it. I
sure.
might be able to get it fixed someday, but I don't know.
There's whatever. Better stuff these days, but that's a nice vintage piece of gear. Anyways, what were we saying? Oh yeah, that color of the monologue. So yeah, I won't. I think if I were to get a gold anything, I'm gonna wait until I can get my limited. Have you seen the gold MPC?
No.
So the Akai MPC, of course. Yeah. They did like a special limited edition run of like ones in a gold finish.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
It looks really funny. Like it's
here it is.
At the top. It's pretty bling. My buddies and I were talking about because I think it's battery powered, so we were talking about turning it into like a big wrapper chain.
A wrapper?
Like wear that around your neck.
That's such a good idea.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think. I don't know. So, anyways, I'll leave you with that to kind of ponder.
Yeah, my mind is blown. It's going to take a while. I'm going to have to like sit and have some tea and think about this.
Yeah.
So anyway, Brendan, would you like to say where we can find more of your music or pimp your social media or anything like that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the big up. Sure. Oh, what can I tell you? Probably the simple, like it kind of lives a few places. In terms of new stuff, it's all Metafil. But the fastest way to kind of get at all the different stuff that's out there these days is to just, if you Google Carrot Adventure, just all one word. And then I think the first couple of things that come up are like my SoundCloud, which is soundcloud.com/carrotadventure. And then I think below that there's you got the Metafilter link. So if you're curious to see what the latest stuff is that's coming out, I recommend going to my Metafilter music page.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I'll sometimes post links on Twitter. So if there's any Twitter users out there, we can send tweets to each other. My handle is just Carrot Adventure, again, all one word. So that's about that.
I'll put a link to your Metafilter and your SoundCloud in the description of this episode.
Okay, sick. Thanks, Dan. That was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me as a guest.
Cool. Thanks so much for being our first guest on How to Suck at Recording.
Whoa, I was the first. Whoa, okay, auspicious. Yeah, no problem.
So anyway, here we're gonna end it up with Brendan Carrot Adventure's song, An Even Newer Kind of Beat 2. Thanks for listening.